And I am concerned that your eagerness, a childlike giddiness to carry out the president's revenge tour, you've shown yourself to be unserious in your statements before you were sworn in and some after. You've shown yourself unfit to lead this important agency.
Ma'am, you want to know who was targeted by a weaponized FBI? Me. You want to know how and why?
Well, you
want to know what I'm doing to fix it?
About that. Let me move on.
Well, you should read the
Topics.
book because there's no enemies list on that book.
Today, we're watching something that reflects a much deeper tension in America than a clash between one politician and one official. Congresswoman Madeleine presses Kash Patel with pointed questions about the weaponization of federal institutions and the use of political retaliation. And this is why it matters. Across the country, among conservatives, independents, and traditional Democrats alike, there is a growing distrust of federal power and a widespread fear that any administration can turn government institutions against those it views as a threat. These hearings aren't happening in isolation. They're unfolding at a moment when many Americans no longer believe there is equal justice under the law. And history has given them plenty of reasons to feel that way. So let's watch this exchange in full and then break down what's really driving this divide in America right now.
Thank you, Chairman Rogers, Ranking Member Meng, Chairman Cole, Ranking Member DeLauro. And thank you, Mr. Patel, for your testimony and for being here today. I've been looking at the President's 120-word FBI budget request, the so-called skinny, I'll call it Ozempic request, that states that, quote, the undoing of the weaponization of the FBI is one of the administration's top priorities. The weaponization of the FBI is something that deeply concerns me. It should concern all of us. And yet, since taking office, President Trump has been on a revenge tour. He has targeted individuals, universities, law firms, with executive orders to cut them out or to make them come under his will. He has used ICE to disappear U.S. citizens without due process, and he's fully ignored a unanimous Supreme Court order, and then over the weekend wasn't sure if he was obligated to uphold the Constitution of the United States. In your book, your recent book, Government Gangsters, you include an appendix with a list of names that people have referred to as an enemies list. Now, I know you will claim it's just an appendix, not an enemies list. So let's focus on how the president sees it, on what the president calls it. And you proudly display his quote on the front cover of your book. The president calls this a brilliant roadmap, a blueprint. And I have not even raised your storied children's book, The Plot Against the King. It concerns me how many people from this blueprint have been targeted with executive orders and FBI investigations. The FBI cannot be weaponized, and under your leadership, it has been nothing but a weapon alongside the president to go after the president's perceived opponents, to stifle dissent and free speech. A few weeks ago, as we saw through a social media post that you quickly deleted, the FBI arrested a judge in Wisconsin for correctly asking ICE officials if they had a judicial warrant instead of an administrative warrant, which they did not have. Despite this judge following the law, on the morning of April the 25th, the FBI arrested the judge in an escalation of the weaponization of the FBI under your leadership. Let me be clear. A functioning democracy does not lock up judges. I am gravely concerned about the utter lack of independence of the FBI and its weaponization under your leadership. I am concerned that the president is using this book, your book, as a blueprint, as he has said. It's a blueprint for revenge. And I am concerned that your eagerness, a childlike giddiness to carry out the president's revenge tour, you've shown yourself to be unserious in your statements before you were sworn in and some after. You've shown yourself unfit to lead this important agency. I was an impeachment manager for President Trump's second impeachment. It was a sad, solemn duty. And so I wanted to ask you about that. Mr. Patel, as you and the president continue to weaponize and investigate his perceived enemies, as you follow this blueprint, when can I, a former impeachment manager, expect the FBI at my door?
Ma'am, you want to know who was targeted by a weaponized FBI? Me. You want to know how and why?
Well,
You
maybe
want to know what
need
I'm doing
write
to
a book
fix it?
about that. Let me move on.
Well, you should
Change
read the
topics.
book because there's no enemies
So-
list on that book.
So
There are
you-
people that violated their constitutional obligations and their duties to the American people.
That's good. You
And they
gave
were
them due
rightly
process.
called out.
I'm
And you
changing
should
topics.
give that book to every one of your constituents so they can read about it.
I won't be doing that.
That's their loss.
During your Senate confirmation hearings, you repeatedly denied having any involvement as a private citizen in the firing of FBI officials who engaged in the prosecution against January 6 insurrectionists, the violent rioters who beat and killed Capitol police officers, and whom you referred to as political prisoners. Since then, multiple whistleblowers have come forward, and we know that you likely committed perjury. At the same hearing, you claimed you were not familiar with Stu Peters, an anti-Semitic Holocaust denier, despite the fact that you appeared on Mr. Peters' podcast 8 separate times. 8 times. And you claimed not to recall. Mr. Patel, my second question is, should we worry more about your memory or your veracity?
We should worry more about your lack of candor. You're accusing me of committing perjury.
Veracity?
Tell the American people how I broke the law and committed a felony.
You
Have the audacity to actually put the
all right,
facts
then
forward
the answer is
instead of
both.
lying for political banter so you can have a 20-second
answer
donation
is-
hit.
The answer is both. I believe that the
The
men and
answer is
women of
you're failing, not me.
I reclaim my time.
Go ahead.
Mr. Patel, I believe that the members of the FBI, and I know many of them, many retired, 38,000 people, as you say, it's a little less than that now, deserve the very best, deserve extraordinary independence, deserve freedom from the fears of being investigated, the freedom of coming forward to make sure they're doing their job. And I'll end with this, that I think it's interesting that in your proposal today, you find yourself at a gulf of difference between you and the president. I wonder how you will resolve that. Will you go to the president and say, we need 11.2 billion, not what you cut out of here? You're asking for more than $1 billion than the president's request. Are you going to go to the president and straighten out that gulf?
I'll do what I've always done and represent the American people, defend this country, and make sure the Constitution is always upheld and the FBI is never weaponized. Maybe you should do the same.
So you agree with the president when he says he doesn't know if he should uphold his constitutional duty?
If you want to just keep putting words in my mouth, the TV cameras are outside.
I thank you. I yield back. Again, this is an unserious moment, sadly, for the FBI. I yield back.
More so for you.
Mr. Strong.
What stands out in this exchange isn't the personal clash. It's the deeper question underneath it. What happens to trust when Americans believe federal power is being used to punish political opponents instead of protect constitutional rights? That isn't a partisan concern. It's a national one. Congresswoman Madeleine Dean confronts Kash Patel over accusations of weaponization, revenge politics, and executive branch targeting. Patel responds by turning the charge around, arguing that he himself was the target. That back. And fourth is familiar. American history is full of moments where rival factions accused each other of abusing federal power. From the Nixon era to Hoover's FBI and beyond. This distrust didn't appear overnight. It's rooted in documented abuses that still shape how Americans interpret moments like this. Dean points to Trump's executive actions and Patel's own writings. And regardless of where people stand on Trump, Americans remember a hard truth. Administrations of both parties have used intelligence and law enforcement tools to advance political goals. The left remembers COINTELPRO. Conservatives remember Ayer's targeting scandals. Independents remember the post-9/11 expansion of surveillance that touched everyone. That's why accusations of weaponization resonate. They align with lived experience, not just rhetoric. Patel's claim that he's trying to reverse weaponization raises another concern, that the system simply swings depending on who's in power. When law enforcement appears reactive rather than independent, public faith collapses. What we're seeing now is a growing belief that federal institutions answer less to the Constitution and more to whoever holds office. If Americans come to believe political policing is real, that's a crisis of legitimacy. Trust isn't partisan. Once it's gone, the Constitution becomes an argument instead of a foundation. People watching this hearing aren't just seeing Dean versus Patel. They're seeing decades of fear about federal overreach. They're exhausted by institutions being turned into political weapons against protesters, parents, journalists, and public figures alike. And when both sides accuse each other of the same abuse, the public is left believing that no matter who runs Washington, power serves itself. If this country wants to restore unity, it has to restore fairness. America cannot survive if half the nation believes federal agencies are tools of political retaliation. When trust collapses, accountability follows. And equal protection becomes an idea instead of a reality. So I want to hear from you. Do you believe federal institutions are being used for political purposes, or is this all exaggerated for partisan gain? And more importantly, how do we rebuild trust once Americans stop believing the government is acting for the people?